I saw everything.
Amara, wait, it's not what you think.
He's telling the truth.
It was 2 in the morning, and Amara Cole stood frozen in the doorway of her own bedroom, staring at the two people she trusted most in the world. Not a stranger who broke in, not a burglar, her husband, and the sister she had raised like a daughter. 12 years of careful boundaries, undone in 90 days because of one phone call she never should have answered. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just asked one question that neither of them could answer. For 12 years, Amara had lived by one unspoken rule. Family could visit, but no one stayed. Not her cousins, not her aunts, not even her own mother for more than a weekend. People called her cold. Her family called her proud. What none of them knew was the promise she'd made to herself as a girl, after watching one relative's kindness destroy another relative's marriage, that when she built her own home, it would be untouchable. For 12 years, it was. Until one phone call convinced her to let her guard down for just 3 months. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos 3 months earlier. Amara's life looked nothing like the woman frozen in that doorway. She had a husband who still made her laugh after 12 years, 2 children who filled the house with noise she never got tired of, and a peace she had fought hard to protect. Daniel used to joke that her family thought he'd kidnapped her, and she'd laugh and tell him she liked her peace too much to explain it to anyone. It wasn't about pride. It was about a childhood spent watching an aunt move into a cousin's home and slowly take her husband, watching secrets travel from house to house until nobody trusted anybody. Amara had promised herself her own home would never become that story. Then her mother called, and her voice carried a weight Amara hadn't heard in years. "It's your sister," she said. Nina had lost her job, her apartment, and the relationship she'd built her life around, all within the same month. She needed somewhere to land. Amara said no before her mother finished the sentence and offered to pay for an apartment instead. Her mother's answer cut deeper than she expected. "Your sister needs family, not your money." That night when Amara told Daniel, he saw no reason to refuse. "She's your sister," he said. "We have a spare room. Rules are supposed to protect a family, not separate it." Amara agreed to 3 months. She would spend the rest of her life wishing she hadn't. Nina arrived on a Saturday with 3 suitcases and an apology already prepared, and for the first 2 weeks, she was nothing Amara had feared. She woke early to make breakfast, braided Ella's hair before school, picked No up when Amara's meetings ran late, and filled the house with a warmth it hadn't had in months. Even Daniel noticed. One evening over dinner, he joked that he'd eaten better in 2 weeks than he had in the last 2 years, and everyone laughed, including Amara. Everyone except the moment she caught Nina's eyes lingering on Daniel a second too long. She told herself it meant nothing. "That's my sister," she thought, and let it go. The first real crack came on an ordinary Tuesday, when Amara walked into her own kitchen and found Daniel and Nina laughing over something that stopped the second she appeared. When she asked what was funny, Nina answered before Daniel could. "He was just telling me how bad your cooking was when you two first got married." Amara smiled along, but that story belonged to her and Daniel alone, something she'd never shared with her sister. That night she asked Daniel why he was discussing their marriage with Nina, and his answer landed harder than she expected. "This is exactly why your family says you're difficult." Those weren't Daniel's words. Amara recognized them instantly. They belonged to her sister. Over the following weeks, Nina became something Amara couldn't quite name. Always present, always helpful, and always somehow at the center of every conversation in the house. To Daniel, she said things like, "Your wife doesn't realize how lucky she is to have you." To Amara, she asked if everything was okay between her and Daniel, her voice laced with concern that never quite reached her eyes. To their mother, she painted herself as the one trying not to cause trouble in a house that didn't want her. Whenever Amara raised a concern, Nina cried before Daniel could even respond, and somehow Amara became the one who needed to apologize in her own home. Then Ella asked a question that changed everything. One afternoon, without any warning, her daughter looked up from her homework and asked why Auntie Nina wore Mommy's perfume when Daddy was home. Amara felt something cold settle in her chest, a feeling she couldn't explain away as jealousy or imagination anymore. She began paying attention differently after that, not to what Nina said, but to what she did when she thought no one was watching. The warmth that had once felt like a gift now felt like something being built carefully, deliberately, in a direction Amara was only beginning to understand. When Amara finally told Nina the 3 months were nearly up, the sweetness disappeared from her sister's face in an instant. "So you're throwing me out," Nina said, her voice suddenly sharp. Amara reminded her calmly that they'd agreed on 3 months from the start, but Nina only laughed and said Amara had always resented helping her. That night, Amara overheard Nina crying in the living room and found Daniel's hand resting on her sister's shoulder when she walked in. Nothing about it looked wrong on the surface, but something inside Amara broke quietly and permanently. "Take your hand off my sister," she said, and the argument that followed was the worst of their 12-year marriage. For the first time, Daniel slept in a different room. 3 days later, Amara found a hotel receipt tucked into Daniel's jacket pocket, dated for a night he'd told her he was working late. He explained it away as a client dinner that ran long, and she wanted desperately to believe him. Then she found a second receipt. Then messages on an old tablet that still synced to his phone, conversations that started as harmless jokes and slowly became something else entirely. "I wish I had met you first," one message read. But the message that broke her wasn't from Daniel at all. It was from Nina, and it said she sometimes believed she was meant to have the life her sister had built. Amara didn't confront either of them right away. She wanted to see it with her own eyes, not just read it in a message she could still convince herself was taken out of context. So she told Daniel she'd be away overnight for work, packed a small bag, and drove 3 blocks before turning around. She sat outside her own house in the rain until after midnight, watching 2 shadows move behind her bedroom curtain. She walked inside quietly, climbed the stairs she'd climbed 1,000 times before, and opened the door to the room she and Daniel had shared for 12 years. There was no explanation left to offer, and for once, neither of them tried. Daniel stood frozen. Nina pulled the sheet around herself and started to cry, saying her sister's name like it might still mean something between them. Amara didn't raise her voice. She looked at the sister she had helped raise, the sister she had led into the one place she'd sworn to protect, and told her to get out of her house. When Daniel started to speak, she turned to him and said the same 2 words. "Get out." Her mother arrived the next morning expecting to comfort her daughter, but what she offered instead was a plea to save the marriage. "Daniel made a mistake," she said, as though mistakes explained everything. Amara asked quietly what her mother would call what Nina had done, and her mother's answer cracked something in her for good: "She's your sister." Amara laughed through tears that finally came, and told her mother that Nina remembered being her sister the moment she needed somewhere to live, and forgot it completely the moment she climbed into her husband's bed. "Think about your children," her mother said, and Amara answered that she was thinking about her children, thinking about making sure they never grew up believing betrayal was something a woman simply had to tolerate to hold a family together. Weeks later, Daniel asked for forgiveness, and Nina had quietly disappeared from every family gathering. But Amara discovered something that reframed everything she thought she understood. The affair hadn't started the night Nina moved in. It had started months earlier, at a family event Amara hadn't attended, where Daniel and Nina exchanged numbers that turned into conversations, and the conversations turned into feelings before Nina ever lost her apartment. Her mother's phone call hadn't caused the betrayal. It had simply opened the door to something that was already waiting on the other side. A year later, Amara and her children were living somewhere new, somewhere she chose for herself instead of somewhere she'd been given. She sold the old house because she couldn't walk past that bedroom door without seeing it again. Daniel saw Ella and Noah on the days they'd agreed to, but Amara never let him back into the rest of her life. Nina sent messages every few months, each one asking for forgiveness Amara wasn't ready to give and might never be. One afternoon, her mother came to visit the new house and stood outside the door, asking quietly if she could come in. For a moment, Amara said nothing, and her mother's face showed she feared the answer. Then Amara opened the door and told her something she'd spent a year learning the hard way, that she used to believe walls kept a family safe, but she understood now that walls protect nothing. It's the character of the people you let inside that decides whether a home survives. She looked back at her children laughing in the next room and finally let her mother in, on her own terms this time. Sometimes the person who destroys your home doesn't break down the door. Sometimes you love them enough to hand them the key.